RadioNext.tv on the Cool Groove site. It is that time again every Wednesday morning. Warp and Woof Radio, sponsored by the Comenius Institute, Dr. Mark Echo, Harold H.B. Bell, in the house to weave wisdom and knowledge in the world in which we live.
I love how you say that.
Hey, man, it's absolutely positively the truth. And we do this off air, on air, just in our brotherhood that we share.
Yep, we do.
Man, we getting close to this holiday.
That's right.
This Christmas season, and happy holidays, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
to everybody out there, we see a lot of white stuff outside the window here today, and I suspect, like most of the nation, you all out there are doing the deep freeze with the rest of us here in Indianapolis. But it's a great day. We're having a great guest today. Ben Orbaugh is coming in, and he's going to talk to us about his mission to Uganda and his abilities that he has there to exercise to help people learn how to plant corn and great crops and feed themselves.
Now, in that scripture,
yeah,
you can either hand them a fish sandwich or teach them how to raise
there you go.
Fish or catch some fish. And it's going to be a great show today, Mark. And, going into this holiday season, let's just address some issues at hand about people going through the depressions and people not being able to find some peace and happiness in this holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
And reality is the Savior was born.
There it is.
We can have us another chance on this in this thing called life, and in this thing that we have to deal with every day in togetherness. And that's what I love every Wednesday about coming here and meeting with you.
Every single week, man. Just a quick story to say, since you mentioned that. Yesterday I was carrying on a conversation, about a half-hour conversation with my across-the-street neighbor. We're both cleaning our driveways. Come to the end of the conversation, he's talking about, his uncle who he lost, who basically raised him. And he began to cry. And here are two grown men out on our street holding each other because this man has just lost his father figure. This is what we talk about concerning the Christmas season. This is every season. This is a compassionate, loving, caring, kind, generous, gracious response to people because they are people made in God's image. There you go.
And what I love about Ben coming in today is we're talking about transcending, just your normal everyday life and then going to help some people who are just totally unaware of how to plant and harvest crop. And
that's right.
One of the most simple things that you would think, this cat's taking his life and said, this is what we're going to go do.
That's it.
So today, after we listen to this music, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all the great things during this holiday season that we need to do, and also how the gift of giving is just so paramount. And so we're going to talk about helping others. We don't talk about it through farming, but I'm sure that the gamut and the
it'll go wide and deep, man.
Go way deeper
That's right.
than just farming and helping. So you are listening to Warp and Woof Radio on the Cool Groove site. Please stay tuned. We'll take a couple of music breaks. And when we come back, Dr. Mark Echo, Harold H.B. Bell, this season of giving will be shared today on the Cool Groove site. RadioNext.tv. We are live on the Cool Groove site. Warp and Woof Radio every Wednesday morning. Comenius Institute sponsors this great show where Dr. Mark Echo and Harold H.B. Bell deliver all the things pertaining to the book of Proverbs and wisdom and knowledge and trying to help our young people acclimate themselves to being away on their own for the first time. Dr. Mark, let's give Comenius some love.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out, absolutely. So I actually got my brochures sitting in front of me here for our guests coming in, so they get a copy of these. Got these brochures, if you're out and about and interested, happy to have you pick some up here at the studio or anytime you get to see me. Comenius Institute, where Christian wisdom and life connect. Our connection, of course, with IUPUI is that we talk with students about what they're dealing with in the college classroom and the kinds of ethical issues and kinds of academic intellectual questions that they might have that make a difference in their lives. And I come alongside them to talk about those things, and that's important to us.
And you've done a wonderful job. And in just this last year, we're coming up on a year, and we're going to be giving you some details and information on the one-year anniversary of Warp and Woof Radio, Comenius Institute here at RadioNext.tv. It's going to be a live setting.
Yeah.
We don't have all the details, but dagnabbit, you're going to know all about it. And this is a great topic today, helping others through farming. And I like to use metaphor when we talk about farming. Because that can be anything from the seeds that you plant in the dirt for the seeds that you planted in these young people's minds.
There you go.
We're farming today, but sometimes missionaries, Mark, are seen as invaders attempting to change the culture of other people and groups. How do you respond to the changes that we go and do? I know my cousin Brian Hudson just left Africa on a 2-week missionary, trying to plant the seed of Christ into the life of some of these people who have never been engaged. So,
that's right.
How do you feel about this when other people say we're invading the cultures of other folk?
Well, honestly, it makes me a little angry.
I'm sure it does. But.
Here it is. So just this week, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal called "Those Imperialistic Christian Missionaries." And what was going on here was this connection here at Williams College in Massachusetts, where they are trying to set aside this particular monument to the Haystack Movement, which was erected based on the 1806 5 students took shelter from a storm and pledged to spread the gospel worldwide. And I think this is a really powerful monument here on the campus of this college. Well, the college and some folks in the college want to get rid of this monument now because they don't think that it's welcoming for those outside of the school. They view any kind of Christian connection, any kind of Christian commitment as negative in their view. So let me kind of push back on this in a different way. Let me approach this from the back door. Let me say that Christianity came out of an Asian African origin. Let me say that again for all of you white folks out here who don't get this. Christianity came out of an Asian African origin. Augustine, arguably the greatest Christian theologian, was African. He was from Carthage, which is present-day Tunis in North Africa. In 2 Corinthians, for instance, there was a famine in Jerusalem. Paul calls out to the Greeks, who are the Europeans, remember, to help their Jerusalem, that is, their Asian African brothers. I think this is a powerful concept. And I think I've mentioned this book on the show in the past by Rodney Stark, who wrote a book called The Cities of God, talking about the urban poor and the Christians. And one of the things that he talks about in this particular book, as well as, I could document all kinds of things about this, that Christian leaders and apologists in the 1st and 2nd century were saying to the Roman leaders, that is, the Roman despots of the day, hey, look, man, quit persecuting us because Christians are your best citizens. So I'm going to turn this back around now. All the folks out in Massachusetts at Williams College that want to somehow get rid of the Haystack Monument, I want to say to them that Christians are your best citizens. Christians are your best students, and you ought to be encouraging these young people rather than trying to dismiss the movement as a whole.
Before we go to the next question, Mark, I have a dear friend, Michael Sy here, one of the most educated, grounded brothers who happens to be a Muslim. And he said, HB, show you a good Muslim, I'll show you a good Christian. Show you a good Christian, I'll show you a good Muslim. He said we're so much alike in the ways of what the beliefs and principles are about helping mankind. Just those little bitty differences in practicing the religion in your culture that makes us different. And it was so amazing when I started, he started translating scripture. And it's almost exactly the same. And it was so scary. I was like, wow. We are really messing this thing up by trying to pick apart the differences instead of just embracing the things that we are so much alike with. Why are Christians driven to help others, Mark? And even if the others are not like us, why are we driven to help?
Sure. I think this is really a powerful idea here, and it kind of goes back to your comment just a moment ago about Muslims and Christians. There's a reason why people actually reach out to do good things, and I would argue that the good things that are coming out of a Christian context have a reason and a basis for this, that we actually believe in a personal God, and that this personal God really makes a difference in our lives, and that the ethics that are invested in our lives come out of that particular context, which actually happens to be one of those differences between Christianity and Islam. But to the question, I think it's really important to go back to First Testament teaching again, which is kind of the framework for Proverbs. And I would begin with Deuteronomy 15. Deuteronomy 15, 7 to 11, provides a summary of how God desires the poor to be treated. And this verse, in verse 11, is fantastic. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, to the poor in your land. Open your hand wide. There's the metaphor. So constantly throughout First Testament teaching, prophets condemn those who neglect or oppress the poor. And what unites the widow, the orphan, and the sojourner in terms of God's focus is that these people are the most vulnerable. My comment generally to all of us is find the people who are most vulnerable, go help those people. And it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter if they're pagan. Our responsibility as Christians is to reach out to all of those people who are our neighbors. It doesn't begin with government programs, let me also emphasize. It begins with the family, it begins with the church, it begins with the neighborhood. It sounds vaguely like some things we talk about on a regular basis here.
Absolutely, and it sounds like also that this great prophet, Dr. Mark Echo, once said, anything that you give with an open hand is passing along authority, and if it has a closed fist, then you are trying to be powerful.
There you go, man.
Right? You don't think I was listening up in there. I am listening. And our brother Ben Arbaugh just came in studio, and we're going to be talking to him at the top of the hour about just giving to those in needs, and it's just such a great segue as we come to the end for our first break of this first segment. Mark, what does Proverbs say about helping others? You know, I'm all into this, but what does it say? Yeah,
Proverbs is very clear over and over and over again. Whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. That's Proverbs 14:21-22. They do not go astray who devise evil. These are the folks who do go astray. Those who devise good meet steadfast love and faithfulness. Chapter 14, verse 31 in Proverbs, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. So there's all kinds of other passages here we could talk about concerning crops and work. One of my favorite little statements in Proverbs 24:27 says, prepare your work outside, get everything ready for yourself in the field, and after that build your house. There's a reason for that, because crops take a long time to develop and grow. Any farmer knows that. That's a really powerful and important concept. So when we're talking about helping others, we need to set priorities, we need to set a plan forward, and that's what we've invited Ben to come and talk about today.
You know what I love, man, how all of this, you know, the verbiage that we speak each and every week and some of the things that we do in our teaching. You know, I always use the analogy about the apple seed. If you plant it today and can pick an apple tomorrow, then don't eat it.
There you go.
It's dangerous because things don't grow that way.
That's right.
And here we are right here, right now, talking about the process. You know, when you go plant this seed of love and go plant this seed of hope and empowerment, it will not happen overnight.
That's right.
You have to keep tilling it. You have to keep pulling the weeds from around it. You have to keep going and making sure that that crop is growing effectively. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk some more about farming and raising and helping and contributing to this great planet Earth that we live on. Dr. Mark Echo, Harold H.B. Bell, right in here, Warp and Woof Radio on the Cool RadioNext.tv. You are listening to Warp and Woof Radio on the Cool Groove site, and our guests have arrived, and I cannot wait to hear what they have to say.
That's right.
Farming and helping those folks who need it. Today's show is helping others through farming, and Mark and I have kind of thrown some metaphor on the beginning of the show about farming, and it's not putting a seed in some dirt. It's putting hope in an onion.
There you go.
And we're going to make it happen. And in the second segment, Mark, who is writing, or why don't we hear more about the importance of farming? And do we take farmers and farming for granted? You know, America was built around farming. I try to tell people all the time, our actual school calendar is built around the 1846 farming.
It is, really.
People don't even understand. That's why we go to school and we're out all summer. But farming is crucial in this world we live in. So why is it so important, and do we take it for granted?
Well, let me answer the second question first. Do we take farmers and farming for granted? Yes. I have students, this is no joke, I have young students in classes who think that food comes from the grocery store. Honestly, straight up, they think that somehow they walk into some box store and that's where food magically appears. They have no sense of understanding of what farming is all about. So let me suggest a couple of ideas here, which I found in my study this last week. I've had some folks invested in the process of thinking through this with me as far as some articles that I've found here and there. And I've found this one person who actually was not a farmer. His father was not a farmer. He was not son of a farmer, he says, but he actually became a farmer afterwards. Really fascinating story, a farmer out in Iowa. And then there was another article that I discovered this week that had to do with the concept of eating as discipleship. Let me just say that again slowly, because that's not something you normally hear. The concept of eating as discipleship. So here it is, a book by Lisa Graham McMinn, that's McMinn, entitled To the Table. And the subtitle is A Spirituality of Food, Farming, and Community. And it's really a fascinating statement here. She's suggesting that eating is an agricultural act, but it's also an act of discipleship. And her whole point behind this is we don't think about what we're eating. We don't really give it any purpose or infuse it with any kind of meaning. And the sadness of that is that we take it for granted. So we're coming back to the question again. Do we take it for granted? Absolutely, yes.
Almost like breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
We should be gracious at all stop. So with that being said, we're always striving as Christians for that the big payday, so to speak, which is eternal life.
Right.
So with that being said, why do Christians meet the physical needs of people if we're just interested in their eternal life?
Sure.
And their well-being as far as their spirituality?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we hit a lot in this radio show is the concept that we are whole people. That is, that all of us, the whole makeup of ourselves, is important. We're not just an emotional slice or a physical slice or a spiritual slice, but this wholeness of life is important, and it's something that's taught from Genesis to Revelation. Two passages come immediately to mind, James 2 and 1 John 3, where both James and John say the same thing. If you see your brother in need and you walk away from him and say, hey man, I'm going to pray for you, but don't do anything for him, that's wrong. So let me suggest a few ideas here, a few places that are here actually in Indianapolis and elsewhere that really highlight these kinds of ideas. One of them is an organization with a friend of mine. He actually lives in France, but he goes back and forth to Africa all the time. And his organization is Water for Good. That's waterforgood.org. And they have a tremendous operation where they're digging wells constantly in Africa for people who don't have fresh water. Another organization is Food for the Poor. Food for the Poor is actually a group of folks who will take you on mission trips and engage you and introduce you to folks who have desperate needs in terms of a poverty of food. They just don't have any. And then, of course, our guest today, Ben Orbaugh, is coming, and he is invested with a seed group, Access to Seeds. Naseko is the seed company, and it's a really important seed company because what it does is it gives small farm owners an opportunity to grow their crops at a greater rate, have a better yield, and so that they can feed themselves better as well as the people around them. These are powerful, important organizations.
Very powerful and very important, and much like this next question is, Ben has taken it upon himself to say, hey, let me go do this over in Africa and help these people who are in dire need. And many people listening right now will say, hey, we've got needs in our state.
Big time.
We got a lot of people here to help in our state. Ben's doing something a little bit different. It's stretching the rubber band, as they like to say, before it pops. But in the state of Indiana, what kind of needs do we have, and then how are Christians helping fulfill some of those needs?
Yeah, so we've actually had some of these groups here on the radio show, as you well know. Leon and Dawn came in. They have a group called Food for Souls. That's food for, the number 4, souls.org. They do great work, especially with the indigent here in Indianapolis, with the groups that none of the rest of us really see under the underpasses of Indianapolis. Wheeler Mission, we've had Dennis Abrams in. He's explained to us some of the great work that they do, his work in particular with men in the community. And then Neighborhood Fellowship, our good friend Jim Striedelmeyer down at 10th Street, who is doing just phenomenal work down there for 20 years, reaching out and helping folks in the community. Let me mention a couple of other important groups here. One of them is, and this is something you just go online and check this out. It's called foodpantries.org. That's the two words, foodpantries.org. And you can check this out in terms of what's going on around Indianapolis. And if you go to that particular website, you'll find food banks like Midwest Food Bank. You'll find Gleaners Community Cupboard Southwest, Society of St. Vincent de Paul, Hunger Incorporated, all kinds of good groups that are doing good things here in the community. I highly recommend that. And then, of course, Gleaners. Gleaners here in Indianapolis, as well as an emphasis throughout America. But Gleaners here in Indianapolis is very helpful, really reaching out to the poor and those who need food the most. All kinds of groups helping folks out.
And before we take this break, Mark, I would like to mention also Second Helpings, who is another great organization. Yes. I've had the pleasure of working with them with some of our needy students that we are helping after school programming, and they provide sometimes the only meal, a full meal that these kids get a day. So we have to mention them as well. When we come back, we're going to talk about how we can be involved in the community as Christians as far as helping this problem. And then we're going to meet Mr. Ben Harbaugh and find out, the great work he's doing and how we can help support him. You are listening to Warp and Woof Radio on the Cool Groove site at RadioNext.tv. RadioNext.tv on the Cool Groove site. Dr. Mark Eckel, Harold H.B. Bell, live in the RadioNext.tv studio. And we are awaiting the great works of Mr. Ben Orber to come on this the set here and find out more about his farming initiative over in Africa. But today we're talking about helping others through farming. That's the topic of the show today. And we're using metaphors, I always like to say, and farming is more than planting seeds in the dirt. Let me just put it like that. We're actually trying to galvanize communities with some of these thoughts and some of these principles. And speaking of which, this is the part of the show where Dr. Mark gets to show his word. He is a teacher, a professor, a doctor. And so teaching is one of the main things that Dr. Mark likes to do. And so, Mark, who is writing, talking, and showing how Christians should be invested in farming?
There are all kinds of folks out there. I want to give some love out here this morning to my Canadian friends. One of my favorite journals, Christian journal, is called Comment. It's out of Cardus, so you can go to Cardus, CARDUS.ca. That's Cardus.ca, and find Comment magazine. Fantastic stuff there, and I really highlight a few of the articles that I found there actually as I was preparing for this program. One of them actually gave us a good review of a man's work. His name is Scruton, and he wrote a book called How to Think Seriously About the Planet, The Case for an Environmental Conservatism. And Roger is a learned man. His actual book came out of Oxford University Press. But what he argues for is that we actually have to make sacrifices for our surrounding environment and for our neighbors. And what he emphasizes is something called oikophilia. Oikophilia literally means love of home. Oikophilia, love of home. So we're always sacrificing for the people that are closest to us. And so when we're invested in our neighborhood, we're invested in our environment, then we're going to be invested in taking care of the things that have been given to us. This is a fantastic book. I highly recommend that people reach out and check this out. But also Comment magazine from Cardus, that's C-A-R-D-U-S. Wonderful stuff. I highly recommend it for anybody who's a thinking Christian who wants to see, hey, how does this relate to the real world?
And speaking of real world, I've been talking all morning. We're talking about more than putting seeds in this soil. So this next question, I guess, would address that fact. How do we become involved with and influence our gifts to help others, even if we are not farmers?
So I have to tell you that I've got something all set up for everybody here. For those of you who have some near and dear connections to the past, you will really appreciate what I'm about to play for you right here, right now. Listen to this voice. You will, if you know it, you're going to be familiar with it. And the title of it is So God Made a Farmer.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, and dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then painin' from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk, somebody who'd bale a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
I don't know about you, HB, but I think if we don't have a tear in our eye after listening to that, I'm not sure what's wrong with us here. This is fantastic stuff from the famous Paul Harvey. That comes from a 1978 speech that he gave. Highly recommend it.
Wow.
Yeah.
1978. And sometimes when we listen to some of the tapes and rebroadcasts from, years and years back, it's so ironic how relevant these issues, these topics are today.
Absolutely.
Much like what we do when we read our Bible.
How about that?
How unbelievable that 2,500, 3,000 years ago, all the things that were talked about, discussed, and written, inscribed in the Bible, we have to live by today.
That's right.
So we have to be cognitive of that. Closing out this segment, Mark, the favorite part of your day. What movies and documentaries could help others focus on farming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got some here just about eating. I thought I'd really focus on this part. There's a great movie called Big Night. The title is Big Night, and it's about the joy of cooking. If anybody knows Stanley Tucci, that's his name is Tucci, Stanley Tucci. There's a great scene in the middle of this film where two brothers are working together in the kitchen, and it has absolutely no dialogue, and they are preparing for each other a perfect omelet. It's really a fascinating scene. Big Night is the title of the film. Babette's Feast. If anybody talks about food preparation at all, you have to go back to the famous Danish drama where a young woman is taken in by a family, and in order to demonstrate the grace that's been given to her, she prepares this lavish meal, a triumphant banquet feast for all of these folks who have never eaten the way she has prepared this food. It's fantastic stuff. A documentary that will make you rethink what you eat and where it comes from is entitled Food Inc. That's Food Inc., I-N-C, period. Hero Dreams of Sushi, 2011. A master sushi creator. Is a really fantastic place. Actually, I was doing some study on this and found out that President Obama actually ate there under Hero's sushi making, the master sushi creator. Julie and Julia. Meryl Streep plays Julia Child. Anybody who knows anything about cooking knows Julia Child. And then I've got to give a shout out to all of the young listeners or to all the mothers who want a movie for their kids to watch. And that is Ratatouille. You cannot go away from eating without talking about Ratatouille, which is really all about cooking. And when the town's severest critic tastes Remy's first dish and in a flash fond memories of a loving mother gives him this delicious food, yet it plays across his face, you have this wonderful appreciation of home and motherhood and good cooking. And hey, Mom, you're listening. I know you are. This one's just for you. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Go get that plug in for Ma. And Ma, I sent a hug with him in his suitcase to make sure he pulls it out. We're going to be speaking with Ben Arbaugh and find out more about his mission over in Uganda, specifically showing these people over there who have been kind of left behind in the process of farming and just untrained. Mm-hmm. And we have some new techniques and new skills that can definitely help them maintain and sustain a lifestyle that is necessary as far as health and nutrition goes.
That's right.
Without vegetables, we're nothing. I wish we had some more time because I want to talk to him about some GMOs, but that's for another day because, we've taken our country and just turned it upside down as far as farming goes and now charging people extraordinary amounts of money for just natural crops. And that seems crazy to me. But we are here with Dr. Mark Echo, Harold H.B. Bell, Warp and Woof Radio. Ben Arbaugh will be up next right at the top of the hour. You are listening to RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. This is Warp and Woof Radio every Wednesday morning,
10 till noon, and we are interacting with all kinds of Christian folk from around the Indianapolis community and Indiana in general, folks who are doing good. The tagline for our show comes out of Titus 3, do good, do good, do good. Our focus is on those folks who are invested in the process of benefiting their neighbors and the culture as a whole. And today we have a tremendous opportunity to talk to Ben Orbaugh about farming, the things we've been talking about in the first hour concerning our helping others through farming. We've been talking about those kinds of things. So Ben, welcome to the show. We want you to tell us a little about your family, about yourself, your experiences, what kind of work you do in Uganda and in the Indianapolis community. You can kind of just take it where you want it to go.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you much, Mark and HB, to have me here this morning. It's quite an honor and privilege, and I'm glad to find that you got the heat cranked up here in the studio, because, I live about 100 miles north of the equator. My blood's a little thin, so it's very glad that it's nice and warm in here. So I should say Oriota, which is good morning to the folks back there in Uganda. That's in the local language, that's good morning. So, first I should probably start off and just say that, my faith definitely is a driving force of what I do and how I do it. I don't always do it well, but the battle continues, right?
That's right.
So, a little bit about me, my background. I'm here from Indiana. I grew up on a farm, East Central Indiana, a grain and livestock farm with 3 siblings. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and I'm privileged to have one of my sisters here in the studio with us. She has come and visited me in Uganda, so hopefully she may add a different perspective as we discuss. And my parents are also living on the home farm there, still farming. So my mother and father, my brother and oldest sister are still farming, and then Molly and myself jump in and help as we can. And so that's a little bit about where I grew up. We had pigs growing up, corn, soybeans, wheat farm. And so after high school, I went to Purdue University, studied agriculture there, agronomy, soil and crop management, plus some plant genetics. And after my time at Purdue, I joined Beck's Hybrids, which is a seed company based here in Indiana. And I spent 13 years there with Beck's, which is a great company. I can't say enough good things about the Beck family. And if you ever get a chance, you should have them on the show. They're strong believers. They do great work in the community.
Neat.
And their faith is definitely shown throughout their work. And
are they where they're founded right here in Indianapolis?
They're founded in Atlanta, Indiana, which is just north of here, just south of Tipton. I don't know if you know where Tipton, Indiana
is.
Well,
my word, Ben, I didn't even know we had an Atlanta, Indiana. So
yes. Yeah, it's a metropolis. No, it's a small town, but it's a nice town.
Nice.
But they're great folks. They've been blessed. The seed company's been growing very well the last several years. They're experiencing 15-20% growth a year, and so they're expanding. And so it was a great honor to work there for 13 years. And what I did there is I was a corn breeder for most of that time, working in the research department, helping to develop and evaluate corn hybrids for Midwest farmers. And so after some time there, back in 2012, I decided to move to Africa. So
just out of the blue.
It wasn't out of the blue, but I'm sure we'll discuss more about how I got there. But and then spent the last 4.5 years there in Africa. So between Rwanda and Uganda.
And you are actually part of the church that we all attend. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Crossroads and about the backing that you get from CCC?
Yeah, so I started attending Crossroads. Actually, my sister Molly here attended first. Then I attended because of her. At that time, I was just out of university. I was living with Molly and my brother-in-law Eric, and they were attending Crossroads. And so I started attending Crossroads and became a deacon there later in the years. I served there for a number of years, but then when I decided to go to Africa, they were very, very supportive. Of not like in a traditional sense a missionary. I kind of just packed up my stuff and went, right? And but they've been very supportive, financially, first of all, and they've been very supportive there. And also encouraging, Pastor Scott Dean and Pastor Keith Doan have been very supportive of my work. And plus, a lot of members there. I get encouragement all the time through WhatsApp, messages they send, emails, and especially when I come home. And so it's been great to be a part of that community. And when I come home, I still go there and still know some folks there and feel the love. So.
Well, we wanted to,
and I have to mention too. Actually, both Scott Dean and Keith Doan have come and visited me in my time in Africa.
Yeah, neat.
And so they've come, which is a great encouragement for them to see what I do and how I live, and so.
And you've had other people visit too, right? From the church.
Yeah. There's been some other friends that have definitely visited from the church, and it's been a great experience for them to come and see. For sure. So
that's a good thing. Well, Molly, you came all this way across town. You can't just be sitting over there and not say anything. So tell us a little bit about your interaction in Uganda, and specifically with your younger brother.
Well, I'm not supposed to talk, Mark. Moral support. Well, I had been wanting to go for a long time. Eric was privileged enough to be able to be one of those people to go from Crossroads to both Rwanda, and then this last year he also got to go to Uganda. So he's been to both. So it was kind of my turn, and something I had desired to do from the beginning when Ben first started going there. It's definitely different. We worked a lot. It's hot. You're on the equator, almost, and you do everything by hand. So, Ben and I grew up on a farm, and even though our machinery is older, which he'll probably get into in a little bit, maybe how that equipped him later in life, but for this. But, it's definitely you do everything by hand, and there's a lot of, just vast lands there in one way that can grow, but yet it's a lot more work. So.
One of my favorite pictures that I put up on social media today is of you two sitting on a porch, and it reminded me so much of my sister and I. We're very close, and so it's kind of neat, to have you both here, and whether it be just for moral support or whatever. But nonetheless, we're really glad that you're here. Thanks for being here and spending some time with us today. Ben, why don't you follow up with what that means to you in terms of the support of other people from Indiana? I mean, you can pretty much count on your family maybe supporting you, but talk about how important that is for a church to kind of get behind you in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing that's, for me, it's been very encouraging. When you go to a foreign country and it's a different culture, and it's not always the easiest thing to make friends like you have growing up or your church community back home. There's a lot of challenges that are involved. There's a language barrier, cultural barrier. And so to have that encouragement from back home, just people reaching out to you, it means a tremendous lot. When you're over there, sometimes it can be a little bit of a lonely place. I've done a lot of work in rural settings, and I've been blessed to have different coworkers, and some of them have been expats that have, that you can come alongside and share things and share doing life in a different culture. But there's also been other times that I've been just on my own at certain times, and that's when it's really been a great blessing to have support from the church back home reaching out, whether it's talking to them on the phone or an encouragement letter or email or text. We're a connected world now. Even in the deepest villages in Africa, a lot of times you can be connected, with a cell phone and cell phone towers these days. So.
Yeah, you had used a word here just a moment ago that maybe not many people will understand. So why don't you kind of flesh that out? Just give us a brief definition of what is an expat. What is, when you say that, what does that mean?
Expat, expatriate. That's a good question. Basically, it's somebody that's not native of that country. So the foreigners that are coming from other countries. So whether that be, like in Uganda, Europeans, folks from India, China, they call us all expats. Now they have other words for us as well. One of them's Mzungu, which I may say that throughout this discussion, but it means just foreigner or wanderer. Most people think it means a white man, but it actually means kind of from what I understand, what I've read, a wanderer or a foreigner.
So somebody who doesn't belong in that particular place and time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the kids will yell Mzungu. I mean, with the skin color, I kind of stand out there. They're in the village, so,
Yes.
the kids will often yell Mzungu. So
Actually, one of the pictures that I put up, another picture I liked so much, is of you sitting down, and all of these young people are surrounding you. And yes, your skin color certainly stands out in respect to everybody else standing around you there. That was a big deal. Well, tell me, I'm really fascinated to know a little bit more about the background of you growing up on a farm. Your folks are still farming. And, oh, by the way, tell us again where this is. You said East Central Indiana, but is it close to a town? Tell us some of the background to your family and how you got into farming, yourself from being from a farm family.
Right. So the family farm is just south of Muncie, close to a town called Cowan. Basically, my family's been farming for generations, several generations, since a lot of our ancestors come from Germany and other places in Europe. Like many of us Americans, we're all kind of mutts and mixed up. But so yeah, my grandfather farmed. So I grew up on the farm, watching my grandfather, watching my dad farm. So naturally, just had a love of the land, love of just watching things grow, planting things. I enjoyed the livestock aspect, but I'll be honest, I enjoyed more the crops. Watching the planting and seeing the seeds sprout and grow, and then harvest time was always a great time to see reaping the reward of all your hard work throughout the season. The pigs were just there. They're smelly. They're loud. You have to feed and water them twice a day, every day. Doesn't matter how cold, how hot. And so, that taught me a lot of good work ethic and discipline. I much more enjoyed, I think, the plant side of things. That's why when I went to Purdue, I studied, instead of going into like animal science, I thought, I definitely have to get into plant genetics and the soil and crop management of things.
It's interesting when I hear you talk about coming from the farm and knowing at least that background about you. As an educator, one of the things that's really struck me over many, many years, and this was especially true in the states of North Dakota and Michigan, where I taught for 16 years, that the folks who grew up on a farm have a very different mentality, mindset, outlook on life than kids that grew up in the suburbs, that kids who grew up in the city with cement under their feet. Are there things that you can think back on as you reflect about growing up on a farm that made a difference in your life generally, just as a person? How has it formed you or fashioned you in a way?
Yeah, I think it's different in a way that my experience was, quite a bit different than a lot of other folks growing up, even friends, in high school, for example. The U.S. traditionally was an agrarian society. Now farmers make up maybe 2 or 3% of the population. So, I think it changed me in a way that it was a challenging childhood, but very great too. We were taught work ethic. We were taught the value of hard work, what it meant, the value of a dollar, what it took to earn money. And so I think it instilled in me not only good work ethic, but just a love of environment, love of the land, and I think that spilled over into taking it to Africa. The things I learned growing up on a farm, then my formal education at Purdue, I think those both intertwined to do my work, especially in Rwanda, where I was not only growing seed, but wrenching on tractors and being a mechanic and trying to manage a farm, and knowing different fertilizer rates or seeding rates and things like that, and teaching that to the local folks there. So
it all makes it such a huge difference when you combine all of this. Not to mention your time at Beck's, right? Beck's Seed. I'm sure you learned an awful lot in your experience there as well. One of the things that stands out to me about all of the farm kids I've ever taught, I would probably summarize in 2 words: discipline and responsibility. Folks on the farm, folks who grew up in the country, have a very different outlook on life than folks generally speaking in other places. And one of the things I have always found fascinating is the difference between the farm kid and the city kid. And it really kind of stands out, So your comments about your friends growing up certainly seem to go along with that same kind of idea and mindset.
Yeah, we were never bored growing up on the farm. That was one good thing. And I had many of my friends that came over and enjoyed just working. In fact, a lot of them helped us after school.
Okay.
Would come and work on the farm. So
that's pretty cool. Well, we're going to take a break here. Come back with about 25 minutes after our next musical rendition here of smooth jazz. My friend HB is sitting over there waiting to press the button. You are listening to RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. This is Warp and Woof Radio with Ben Orbaugh. Well, we are back after that rousing rendition of jazz music. You're listening to RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. HB leaving the room with a big smile on his face. Warp and Woof Radio. We're listening to Ben Orbaugh this morning, and we're talking about his good work in helping folks do farming in Uganda. Ben, give us a general overview of your work there, and what do you do and why you're there specifically.
Yeah, Mark. A little bit about what I do. I'm working for a seed company there in Uganda. Name of the seed company is Niseko. It stands for Nalweo Seed Company, so Niseko is just short for that. Nalweo is the village that's right next to where the seed company is established. And so what I'm doing there, my main objective or goals have been to build a research team out of these Ugandan villagers or the surrounding folks. And so I have a team of 6, three ladies, 3 gentlemen on the team. So basically teaching them how to do very applied in the field plant breeding, mostly with corn. And also we're setting up a testing program where we test different varieties and hybrids throughout Uganda to see which ones are best for Ugandan farmers. And so we evaluate things for several seasons before we'll actually take them commercial and sell them to farmers, because we want to make sure the varieties are going to work for them. So they got to make it through some pretty tough things before they would get released. And so I'm building this team. We do a lot of other things. We do a lot of in foundation seed work where we maintain the purity of the parents, and so we're maintaining the lines and the purity for quality assurance.
And you're talking about seeds now.
Yeah,
not
talking
people.
about seeds.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Niseko, some of our main seeds that we sell are, of course, corn. They call their maize. They call it maize. So I may interchange those two, maize and corn, as I speak. Now when I was here in Indiana, I've always used to calling it corn. Now I've been there 4.5 years. I call it maize all the time. So, but they're both the same crop. So we sell maize, upland rice, as well as bush beans, which is like what we call kidney beans. So those are our main crops. We also do some in soybeans, sorghum, and so nothing really in vegetables yet. Our focus are these agronomic crops that are the big crops there in Uganda. And so Niseko sells to farmers there in Uganda. We've also broke into the markets of the Congo, DRC, Burundi, looking at the markets of Rwanda as well as Kenya. And so, but our main marketing area is definitely Uganda. So we develop, we produce, we process these seeds and sell them to mostly Ugandan farmers. And we have several growers that help us do that. We have about 700 or 800 farmer growers that help us grow a lot of these seeds as well. We have our own production farm as well, where we do a lot of the hybrid seed production. But some of the hybrid seed production, as well as the other things like beans and rice, are sourced out to growers, small Ugandan farmers. And
Would you refer to yourself as a missionary?
Wow.
A farming missionary?
This is a topic of discussion a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, if you're a believer in Christ, we're all missionaries. But
there you go.
Yeah, I guess in the traditional sense, I guess not really. But like I said earlier, my faith is the driving force behind whatever believer should be doing and what I do. And I have a lot of discussions, good discussions with my coworkers. Just the other day, I had a discussion with a gentleman named Paul about we were talking about maize and we're talking about work, and we got on the subject of none of this really matters, in the light of eternity. And Paul's a believer too. I've seen him read his Bible several times, so that's opened up conversations between him and I and our relationship, and it was a very good conversation. So there's ministry done there as well.
Sure.
And I've spoken a lot with other coworkers about their faith.
What's always fascinated me about work, about vocation, is that it doesn't really matter what it is you do. You can be bagging groceries or pumping gas or teaching people what seeds to put in the ground, but whatever your giftedness is, whatever opportunities you have in time and place, that's, as you well say, we're all missionaries in that sense of things, and that's really a powerful concern for all of us who are Christians.
Definitely.
Yeah, using your gifts wherever they are.
Right, and that's what I think. I was blessed to grow up in such a great place as the U.S., Indiana, USA, on a farm, and using those blessings to be a blessing to others. There in Africa it's been great.
Yeah,
I have no regrets.
This is one of the things that we started this program with, was the idea that some people view any kind of Christian influence any place else, that is, when we cross into another neighborhood, they view it as colonization, or they view it as some kind of overthrow of another culture. And indeed, the Christian message is one of help and mercy and grace, and nobody's interested in overthrowing anything. We're just interested in helping folks, and that's a huge issue.
Yeah, it's the gospel indeed, right? The gospel has to be in word. Of course, people have to hear the word, but also indeed, I've had conversations like in Rwanda. I can remember a conversation with a gentleman I've been working with for a year or so, and he's like, "Why are you here? You're a little bit different than others." We got into the whole conversation.
Yeah.
What's the driving force?
Right.
So,
yeah. This is something we talk about all the time in the church as well as in my classrooms. Is eventually the discussion will come around to the question that people will ask you, and that is, what makes you different from the rest of us? There's something that sets you apart, and that certainly is the case. Well, tell us, for those of who may not know, tell us a little bit about Uganda, location, demographics, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so Uganda is it's a landlocked country in East Africa. It's about the size of the state of Oregon, I believe, and it's kind of pinched in between the DRC and Kenya. You've got South Sudan to the north, Rwanda to the south. Uganda is a beautiful country. It's resource rich. It gets quite a bit of rainfall. It has a lot of arable land. In fact, I was reading some statistics. They claim that 40% of the arable or farmable land in the East African community is in Uganda.
Wow.
And so it's very rich. So much potential there that's not being used to its potential yet. But we're working to solve that. But it's a young country. The median age is 15, it has the youngest population in the world, they claim.
Wow.
And so it also has one of the highest fertility rates in the world. I think it's 5th in the world for fertility rate, and Uganda is not people poor. You cannot get a loan in that country. There's people everywhere. But the Ugandans are great people. They've treated me very well. Great hosts, great people, very open. And I'm fortunate to live in a place too. Many of them know English.
Nice.
So that's been good. It's been bad as well. It hasn't forced me to learn the local language, but many of them have some level of English. It's made up of several different tribes, which bring their own languages, which makes it rich as well. The main language, of course, is English and Swahili. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. Molly may have a different perspective and can speak to what Uganda's like. But, it has, the geography is very diverse too. It's got highlands and lowlands, mid-altitude mountains, rivers, and lakes. So.
One of the things that I'm sure people are wondering is, if you're landlocked, you're just south of Sudan. One of the things that anybody who reads the news knows that there are tremendous conflicts in the country of Sudan.
Yeah.
So do you ever have any problems in terms of military concerns or any kind of safety concerns at all?
I've been close to some of that, but never been in threat. No really any concerns. It's been pretty secure. The Ugandan military has a pretty good grip on things. Even there's issues in the eastern Congo, DRC, that sometimes spill over into Uganda, but they usually get pretty quick control of it. Even South Sudan. And in fact, Uganda's been a very good country for the refugees. They're very open. They have a very open policy for accepting refugees. They bring them in. They give them land. It's a very good place for refugees. And it's a good thing because they are surrounded with countries that have some problems.
Yeah.
And so there's many refugees that come to Uganda because it's very friendly to refugees. So.
Well, that's great. And just for the sake of knowledge, does Uganda have a Christian president? Is that correct or not?
Yeah, he's claims to be a believer.
Okay.
Museveni, been in power for a number of years. And I think around 80-85% of the population in Uganda claim Christian faith. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's a pretty good segment that's, I think it's 10 or 15% that are Muslim.
Okay.
So
Well, that helps.
They get along very well there. There seems to be very few problems between the two.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. We're always grateful when there's no problems. You know,
Exactly.
that's a good thing. So tell us, how did you decide to work first in Rwanda and then in Uganda in 2012? You had mentioned that date as the time you went over.
Yeah, so a little bit of a long story. I'll try to cut it short, but I first started going actually to Rwanda in 2007. A friend of a friend knew of a project that Food for the Hungry was working on there. It was a pig and corn project, and my background growing up on a pig farm and my love affair with corn, I thought I would be the perfect candidate. So long story short, I ended up saying yes. I would go on some short-term trips and some vision trips to see what was going on. That kind of snowballed through the years between 2007 and 2012, where Food for the Hungry was working on these projects, and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dwight Jackson kind of spun off of Food for the Hungry and started up his own faith-based organization in Rwanda that was Rwandan-based, working in water and agriculture. And so I went to work as opportunities became available. We had received some land where we were going to do some growing of seed for the Ministry of Agriculture and some other folks, and so I went over there to help. To help in these projects. Now, I was a little hesitant. It took me a while. Started going in 2007. I decided not to move until 2012. But if I can tell a really quick story of a turning point. So I was on one of the short-term trips there in Rwanda, and I was in the village collecting water because we didn't have any running water at the farm. And so I was at the well, and as typical, all the kids come to check out the guy at the well. And this one particular kid caught my eye. There's many kids around. They're just dirty. There's a lot of poverty, But one small boy had his brother strapped to his back. And I could tell his brother was very malnourished. And the thought struck me as like, that could have been me. This is just a farm kid in East Africa instead of East part of Indiana. But this kid didn't have the opportunities I have. Look at all the opportunities I had growing up on a farm in the USA in Indiana, through new technologies or new innovations of seed and other things. And I think that was kind of the turning point. It's like, I need to come see if I can't help change that kid's, opportunities. And so that was kind of the turning point. It's like, light bulb went on. And so that kind of motivated me to come back home and start working towards getting over there.
It's interesting when you hear you talk about these things that obviously the Spirit of God is at work in all of our lives, and certainly sounds like He was in yours as well. But in the United States, we have this tremendous opportunity, tremendous privilege of growing up in a nation that's not only relatively peaceful, but my word, it's prosperous in comparison to countries, such as the ones you went into. And so it's always a good thing to hear, people who have been, felt the need to go and do this thing because they know that they've had all these opportunities themselves.
Right. It's when I first went, it was a little more of a romanticized idea of I was going to change the world right away, and it's a little bit of a wake up call after you're there for some months. You're like, yeah, this is a marathon. This is going to take time. This is a marathon. Work will start here. I just have to accept the fact that I may just be on the forefront of something, starting something that'll carry on long after I'm gone. But it's got to start somewhere. So
I always think about that verse in Romans 15 that Paul said, I don't build on anybody else's foundation. So you really are creating a foundation for somebody else to launch from, which is pretty cool stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask a different kind of question. Tell us a little bit about the successes and failures and challenges that you face on a regular basis. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen all three of those things in your life there.
Yeah, for sure. And, it has a way of, Africa can have a way of kind of polishing off the edges of yourself, You learn right away what not to get upset about. You choose your battles more wisely, you know. Some battles aren't worth fighting. There's some things that are just, you kind of got to let it go and choose the ones that are worth fighting, and cherish the ones that you win, because you're going to lose a lot, you know. But there's been a number of successes, you know. The company I'm working for now, Niseko, the gentleman who started the company, Nikolai, he's a guy from Belgium. He's been there about 20 years, and he's done a lot of great work there, great humanitarian, and I see a lot of the challenges he's fought over the years. Tough guy. I mean, you couldn't live through all the things he's lived through to build this business that he's got without a lot of failures, a lot of challenges. But he's also had some successes, and we've been fortunate to have some really good successes the last few years with the release of new varieties and hybrids that are really changing farmers, changing their lives. You know, it sounds a little bit dramatic, but you see it when you go out there. You see a farmer who's using new improved seed, maybe some agronomic practices that we advised him on, and he's able to produce more, not only to feed his family more, but he has some to left over to sell. And instead of sending one kid or paying school fees for one child, he can send 2 or 3. So it really is a game changer. You know, these guys, it's an agrarian society. These guys are farmers, and that's the only income they may have is from what they produce. And so those are some nice successes. You know, of course, there's challenges. You know, the environment. You can have too much rain, not enough rain. You know, in Uganda, there's some other challenges with corruption. You know, we have to deal with that, unfortunately.
You're talking about governmental
corruption, and even just in a society where there's a lot of poverty, you have a lot of people that become opportunists. That may be mean employees. That you have to, you know, there's have to be good accountability. And if somebody's wanting to take something, you can't always stop it. You know, you can try to limit it sometimes, but so there's some challenges for sure. You know, infrastructure, poor roads, getting our product out to folks is a challenge too. But
have you found it in terms of the human person? How have you seen the challenges? You know, growing up on a farm in America, certain kind of an American mindset of discipline and hard work and the hours you put in and so on. What have you discovered as it relates to the folks that you work with there, and the kinds of engagement that they may or may not have with work environment?
Yeah, I mean, Ugandans are very resourceful. Their work ethic is quite good. There are many of them that are hardworking. Sometimes the discipline, for example, with my team, we're a for-profit company. We have set times of work hours, and sometimes it's been a battle to get them to understand you have to show up at a certain time, then you'll go home at a certain time, and there's a certain amount of time you're allowed for lunch. It's an hour, not 2 hours. You know, you can't come back in the middle of the afternoon and expect me not to say something. But it's you know, that's one of the battles I have been fighting a little bit, just to get them to be disciplined and show up on time. But you know, Mark, they don't have a very good an example. It's likely that their parents didn't have a job, so they didn't see their parents suit up and go to work and be at work at a certain time.
There you go. And
so it's pretty open. They're smallholder farmers. They go to work and do work when they want, and so that's been a little bit of a, you know, once you get them there, there's nothing wrong with their work ethic. They will work hard, and but it's their timeliness, I guess.
The issue of time might be different.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll chime in and say that working with, I didn't really work with Ben while I was there. I actually worked with his employees on the research team, and well, first of all, they love Ben, and people who are not on the research team, you can tell, desire to be on the research team, because I think there is some, they love maybe that scheduled. I think there's there are people who may not even be used to it. It's hard to maybe get used to. You can definitely tell that they appreciate the idea of it, and I think it's coming around. Yeah, you see that in I think almost all of your team is they're really great.
They've stepped up for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a big learning curve in the team, but they've done some really great things.
That's really good. I honestly, I don't think that this is an issue of one country or one people group. This is a human issue. This is human. Exactly. All of us, if we were left to ourselves, could tend toward laziness, let's put it that way. So just to make sure that everybody understands that it's our human condition that really is the issue here. Right. So you work in an agrarian society which grows crops. When people hear whether it be a church or, just the farm families that they'll say to you, hey, they're already farmers. They're already doing agriculture. Why do they need you? Why do they need your help? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because they've been farming longer than we have here in the U.S., except for maybe the Native Americans. But yeah, why? There's still a definite need. There's still a need for improved seed. A lot of these farmers are saving their own seed. They're not improved seeds. I mean, they're growing the same seed their great grandfather. Mm-hmm. And we've over the years, plant genetics has improved. We've bred against different diseases, against drought, things like that. So there's hybridization of seed, and so that can give them a huge yield advantage. And there's different agronomic practices they may not be aware of that we've learned through, much research here through our universities, our land-grant universities. And so, things as simple as planting on time. How deep do you plant your seed? How many plants should you plant per acre or per hectare? These kinds of things. What's your crop rotation supposed to be like? And so, and it shows in the statistics. If you look, I mean, Uganda is way behind a lot of the world on how much their yields are. For example, like in the U.S., I think we're around 9 to 10 metric tons per hectare. They're around 1 or 2 metric tons. And now I'm speaking in metric tons, which a lot of people here would laugh because we talk in acres and bushels. Yep. But and we're seeing some of our new improved varieties, double or triple what they can produce. So there's a definite need there to come alongside them and teach them. Now it has to fit in their context. There's not a lot. These folks don't have a lot of money up front to invest in inputs, fertilizers, maybe even seed. But farmers are now there. We have a lot of our customers are thinking of it as a business, that they're investing in seed. They're not buying that extra beer or two at the local bar and buying a kilo of hybrid improved seed. I mean, it's the truth. There's somewhat of a untruth sometimes that, these poor farmers, they don't have enough money to buy seed. Well, it's not entirely true. Seed is fairly low cost when in comparison to for them going to the local tavern or them buying a cell phone or buying airtime for their cell phone. It's about choices. It's about priority. And so those farmers that are choosing to invest, they're being rewarded, and we're getting a lot of folks coming back selling. Last season we sold out of seed. And so the word's getting out. And so there are good things happening over there.
That's great.
You don't always make the front news.
Front page of the paper,
Front page of the paper, but yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff. Honestly, when I hear the words priorities and choices, it sounds like I'm in my classroom. These are words I use all the time with students. So once again, we're talking about humanity here and our help with each other, whether I'm helping students in an Indiana classroom or you're helping farmers in Uganda. I mean, it's the same thing because we're all humans, and that makes a huge difference. So what are some of the personal challenges that you face in terms of fellowship, worship, community in an African rural setting? Tell us about some of that background for you personally.
Yeah, so personally, in my situation, it's probably it's a bit unique. A lot of the, what I say, expats or people that go to Uganda or other places, or a lot of times are based in the cities, where there's a community, where there's more churches, English-speaking churches that they can attend. My situation there in Uganda, I spend probably 89% of my time in the village, out on the farm, and so there's no English-speaking churches there, and so it's been a bit of a challenge for me to even attend church. You can attend church, and it's a bit of my laziness too. I haven't learned the local language, but these Bantu languages are quite difficult to learn. But and the other thing is the fellowship, getting to know people of a different culture on a deep level like I could here in the U.S. It's just different. It's a bit of a challenge. You have the language barrier, you have the cultural barrier. And to be honest with you, I've been disappointed a few times when I've built those relationships and turned out that the individual had a different angle, that they wanted something from you. Yeah. And so So those have been some challenges to get into that fellowship and worship in a community of believers.
You had mentioned something earlier in the broadcast about the issue of coverage for Wi-Fi, internet service, and those kinds of things. So let me kind of take that and ask the question as it relates to fellowship. Do you have any way to capture podcasts, or can you capture something that you can listen to later? Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, I usually do that when I have better internet service, when I'm in the city, in the capital of Kampala, and I can load it on my computer and listen to that. And, like on a Sunday morning, listen to a sermon, that I've downloaded versus going to the local church and listening to a language I'm not familiar with. Oh, some of the music's beautiful. I have been to the local churches, and there is that. But so there's that. The internet service is pretty terrible to stream or download things out there in the village. So I try to do it when I have faster internet.
When you're in the city, just for the sake of knowledge, we just finished our wisdom series, so all of those videos are uploaded. You can go, you can put those on your computer and watch that teaching later on.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
There's a plug for all of the teaching that goes on at our church. I'm really interested, maybe as we kind of move toward the end of our time together, about some stories that you might have of one kind or another, whether it be about the people that you work with, maybe about a difficult situation that you faced in farming, some kind of tension that you might have felt within yourself, or just the daily grind of doing what you do. Tell us a story or two about life that as you see it, as you face it every day.
Right. It's definitely a different lifestyle. As I'm sure my sister can maybe speak to it some as well. You're never really settled, like where I live in the village. I share the house with other individuals, so nothing's really yours. And then I bounce between the village back to the city, and then I do some traveling around Uganda. So it's kind of like a gypsy lifestyle. And so sometimes it's not for everyone. If I were to be married or had a family, there's no way I could be serving in this or doing this kind of work. But and so that can wear on you, I think, psychologically a little bit. It can play on you sometimes, where you just want to have your own things, be settled, have your roots put down somewhere. Like I had that when I was in the U.S., had my own house, my own things, But so I think you got to be willing to be very flexible and live out of a backpack sometimes, but that's still wrestle with that. It can be a bit of a challenge. So it's nice to come home and have some familiar things. And although I'm still bouncing around even when I'm home, so maybe I'm meant to be a traveler, a nomad, I guess. But there's been a lot of good things. To share a story from my team. I'd like to maybe share a story. The gentleman that I have on my team, his name is Paul. He's really been stepping up, basically taking over things. He's like, why I'm not there right now. Paul's leading the team. He's doing everything that's necessary to get things done. But Paul, it's funny how we met. He actually, I walked to work. So one morning I was walking to work, and this guy just jumps out of the bush. I'm like, well, whoa, okay. He's like, Mr. Ben, I'm Paul. I want to work for your research team. I'm like, okay, who is this crazy guy jumping out at me? But I said, okay, well, just give me your phone number. If I have some opportunity, I'll let you know. And some weeks went by. I never got a hold of Paul. Did the same thing a few weeks later. So finally I was like, okay, I'll tell you what, Paul, come to work for me. We'll try you out for a few weeks. And long story short, he turned out to being a very good worker, a tremendous work ethic. And I could see the drive and the passion there for agriculture. And he's really picked up on these concepts of plant genetics and plant breeding with no formal education. I mean, he's got like a high school level education, and the guy continues to impress me. I think he would do it for free. He's got that passion, that drive that I can definitely see. And so he's stepping up, and he's also has a respect for the rest of the team. Because, a lot of these folks they're younger. Most of my team's from 19 years old to 25 years old. And so the rest of the team respects him, because there can be some jealousy because he came on board after the rest of the team, and now I'm putting him in a position that's above them. So that's been a real success story for me. Just God definitely sent Paul, because I've been praying about somebody that would come and because I want this to continue. I'm not going to be in Africa forever.
Right.
And so this thing needs to be sustainable and carry on. And I tell my team all the time, it's your country. It's your challenges.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Don't always, do it because the boss is looking or the boss may discipline me if I don't do it.
Right.
Do it because these are your challenges. Contribute to your country. And so I think the team gets that. They've really stepped up. So
it sounds vaguely like Colossians 3, that you're not supposed to do this as your boss looks over your shoulder, but as the one that you give glory to by whatever it is that you're doing. All of that, it all comes back to a biblical vantage point. So when you talk about the issues of being in Uganda, the culture of the people and so on, we've talked a little bit about the work ethic and those kinds of things. How have you been accepted by families? I mean, let's put it this way: in Indiana, if you live around us, we're going to say, hey, why don't you come over for dinner? Why don't you come watch a game with us, on Sunday, whatever. How do you interact with family structures in Uganda? Is that something that's just kind of natural and normal, or is it very different from what we experience here?
Yeah, that's a good question. They're very acceptive of outsiders in Uganda, and I think that's what I refer back to about the refugees. Ugandans are very acceptive of outsiders, and especially Americans. They love Americans, and I think Ugandans and Americans share a lot of the same views of the world. They're very entrepreneurial, very capitalistic. They very driven. And Molly can speak to that.
Possible.
Yeah, it's a place where all your dreams can come true. There's everything is possible in Uganda. But they're the families there are very, very acceptive. They'll bring you in, they'll treat you, they'll give you whatever you need. I mean, it's part of their culture. I mean, because, for example, some of my team, now that they have a job, they're making a salary, their family knows that. Well, in that culture, you're obligated to help the rest of your family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if they ask, you basically cannot say no.
Wow. Okay.
And so and that not only to your immediate family, but to your cousin, your long lost cousins, if they come to you and ask. And that's why a lot of times you'll see, and this is funny kind of a funny story. I don't know if it's totally true, but you'll see like half-built homes in Uganda and throughout the region. And I'm always like, why? Why don't they finish it? And it's like because people that make money there, sometimes they put their money quickly into things so that when people come and ask them for money, they can honestly say, I don't have it. And so they start putting their money into things that way because they're all the time. Because, the unemployment rate is extremely high. Alcohol is a problem. And so some people have some issues and they're coming to you to ask for money for things that they probably shouldn't. But you still can't say no because you don't know if they're telling the truth or not. But it's a very acceptive culture, I must say. And,
well, as we finish up here in the last minute or two, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience? Anything that comes to your mind, things we haven't mentioned, or things you wanted to make sure to say before we take off here today?
Yeah, go visit Uganda.
Yeah, okay.
The dollar is strong and the Ugandan shilling is weak. It's a beautiful country. It has some of the best kept secrets in East Africa, as far as safaris, beautiful national parks. But no, on a serious note, I think something that kind of strikes me is, if you feel a nudge or a calling to use your skills, your passions to serve others, go for it. Whether that calling or nudge is to go across overseas and do something. It doesn't have to be that. It can be your own neighborhood. It can be the family next door. It could be to change your job, perhaps. Maybe there's a calling to change your job for a certain reason. But my advice is go for it. If you're feeling, prayerfully consider it, ask for advice and go for it. So
got people behind you, your church and family members and folks that are supporting.
Yeah, it took me a long time to move over there. Some years. I think when I got to the point where I was getting sick of hearing myself talk about Africa. I know everybody else was probably sick of it. I was like, okay, maybe it's time to just move.
Yeah.
So
and go do that thing.
Quit the American dream and move over and enjoy the nice weather.
Oh, that's really great, Ben. We're really grateful for all of your good work there, and thank you for spending some time with us here today to tell everybody about this. We'll definitely tag everybody that cares about this stuff in the podcast when it comes out in a couple of days. Next week, we are going to be hearing from Carmen Howell. Speaking of refugees and immigrants you were talking about a moment ago there, Ben, Carmen Howell up in Noblesville is interacting with an ESL program there that's just phenomenal, drawing in all kinds of folks coming from different countries who don't speak the language, and they're doing exceptional work. They're a great Christian group in Noblesville that we'll be talking about next week concerning English as a second language, ESL programs. Then after the Christmas holiday, we're going to be investing some time in talking about mythology and Christmas with a literature teacher. His name is Dave Pappas. He teaches down at Heron High School. That'll be a lot of fun. But tomorrow, this is just for the sake of my mom. Mom, I'm coming to see you. Robin and I are getting on a plane tomorrow afternoon, and we are going to Denver, Colorado to visit family. We're looking forward to that. But until next week, you're listening to RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. This is Warp and Woof Radio. We'll be back again next week, 10 to 12. We'll see you then.